So the other week I took a look at Silent Hill 2, a slow burn psychological horror game with an emphasis on narrative and atmosphere. For this week's video, we're going to be continuing with the theme with the following game. Oops. I told a fib. Look, I've been playing a lot of slow burn survival horror games lately, and it's been great, don't get me wrong, but my urge to kill has just been getting too powerful. The inner call for bloodshed and brutality became too loud to ignore, and I figured there was no other game in my library that could satisfy my bloodlust better than Prodeus. When it comes to boomer shooters, Prodeus is one of the popular kids. It had a fairly lengthy dev cycle, but maintained a pretty consistent level of anticipation throughout the whole thing, especially because the devs did a really smart thing by releasing the map editor early on. This meant that from before the game was even officially released, there's been a pretty high level of community engagement going on here, to the point where I almost feel like what you buy when you buy Prodeus is less of a game and more of a platform, but I'll elaborate on that later. I'm not super familiar with the development of this game, since I only loosely followed it leading up to the release, but from what I know, it was largely developed by two dudes who met each other at Raven Software and worked on Singularity together. Hey, that game sounds familiar. Before they decided that working at big studios sucked donkey dick, so they left and made their own game. Along the way, they picked up a third guy who was big into Doom modding and got Andrew Hulshult to make the soundtrack, because if you make boomer shooters, that's just sort of a thing you do, and lo and behold, we have a kick-ass retro shooter with the crunchiest combat this side of cultic. Because talking about the gameplay is going to be the bulk of this video, let's start with the smaller topic and cover the story. There's a bad alien thing that made the Proteus dimension, and you have to shoot everything now. That's literally it. As far as I know anyway. Maybe there's some hidden deep lore here that would make Dark Souls look straightforward, but I didn't find anything like that, and basically just spent 5 hours depopulating the dark reaches of space. This is an old school shooter in the truest sense when it comes to narrative presentation, because it has none. No side characters, no exposition. The main character doesn't even have a name, just a blue face at the bottom of the screen. Let's call him John Prodeus. That's funny, right? I just took the name of the game and put John in front of it. It's a funny internet thing. They say John Halo and John Fallout and John Thief and John Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Maybe not that last one. Basically, you're a super soldier and you go through standard sci-fi environments killing a bunch of vaguely demonic mutants. In terms of setting, it's Doom with serial numbers filed off, but I don't really give a shit because the art style is cool and the visuals look nice. In terms of the level design, Proteus is actually really ambitious. There's a lot of neat stuff that shows up and some cool experimentation with the conventions of FPS level design. It follows the Slaughterwad school design, where there's not really any emphasis placed on exploration or even really navigation, and the preferred method of play is killing lots of things as violently as possible and as frequently as possible. I can't remember what I played on in terms of difficulty, whatever the medium one is, but on that difficulty you're pretty much constantly getting swarmed by enemies, and it's sort of like a bloody trail of breadcrumbs, the cycle of violence that kind of helps to guide you from one end of the level to the other while you're showered with nearly constant volumes of viscera. From what I can remember, the two levels that stood out the most to me were this one where you've got invincible snipers shooting at you the whole time, so you have to go through the whole level bobbing and weaving through cover to avoid their shots while also killing everything that tries to screw with you. It's basically really violent multitasking. The second real standout is this level that's set in these ancient ruins that are full of sand, and the ground level keeps getting lower and lower while you're fighting your way through it, so you've basically been going through the same rooms over and over, but it's completely different each time, which is pretty badass. That's just two examples, but pretty much every stage is awesome. This really fast-paced gallery of gore that starts at 11 and only goes higher from there. You don't even start out with a weapon, all you got is your fists, and the game still makes you kill shit. Speaking of weapons, since this is a shooter, I've got to spend the next half hour talking about what you do the shooting with. Proteus has a pretty cool arsenal, a mixture of genre standbys and some more unique stuff, though every weapon also has a secondary fire mod, which adds even more variety to the mix. The first gun you get is the pistol, which is probably one of the beefiest pistols I've ever seen in a shooter. It predictably loses some of its usefulness later on, but it's still pretty powerful and satisfying to use. The secondary mode is aiming down the sights, which makes it a little more precise, but also changes the fire rate to a 3-round burst for a quicker kill time. After the pistol, I'm pretty sure you can guess what comes next. The old shotgun, everyone, the workhorse of the genre. Like the pistol, it functions about as expected, though it's still got the extra oomph to it that pretty much everything in this game has. The secondary mode is a charge-up shot that does extra damage if you can time it right. Next, we get the Shredders, dual-wield SMGs that tear through nearly everything in front of you. There's a downside, though, which is that the mag size on these things is microscopic, and they chew through that shit like a hick chews through dip. No secondary here, since you just fire the left one with M1 and the right one with M2. The Shredders also share a slot with the minigun, which just fucking decimates crowds of enemies even more than the Shredders do, though at the cost of burning through ammo. The screen shake when you let loose with this thing. God damn, here's your late epilepsy warning, everyone. Also, all the secondary does is just spin the barrels, nothing special there. Slot 5 is the Explodey slot, home to the grenade launcher and the rocket launcher, which use the same ammo pool, which is weird because I was under the impression that a grenade and a rocket were two different things, but I guess I'm just a dumb civilian. Anyway, the grenade launcher is fairly self-explanatory, shooting grenades in arc trajectory that explode when they hit enemies. Secondary is like sticky bombs or something like that. The rocket launcher is pretty badass, though it's nearly impossible to beat the one from Quake as far as I'm concerned. It's basically the same as the grenade launcher, though it shoots a straightforward missile, so it's a bit easier to use and more precise, though hitting M2 allows you to detonate the rocket in midair if you fuck up. Next up, we got the plasma rifle, probably the real workhorse of the game since it's pretty ammo efficient, and it felt like you get more rounds for this than you do for any other gun in the game. It's really good though, probably the most reliable overall weapon. The only downside is the secondary fire never really seemed that useful. You shoot out like a dart or something that sticks to enemies, then you can like shoot them around corners. I don't know, the game moves so fast that this just seemed too situational to me. The last slot is home to the Chaos weapons, the first of which is like a spark gun that just shoots out chains of electricity that stuns enemies. This thing is fucking boss, but as expected, it goes through ammo pretty quick, and it's not the most common type in the game, so I was sort of more reserved with this one. Secondary mode turns it into a railgun, which you can use to pretend that it's still 1998, and Quake 2 is super popular. I don't even know what the fuck this thing is. It shoots balls of goop, and the secondary is like balls of mega goop. This is pretty much the only clip I have of me using it since I wasn't really a fan of this thing. There's some other weapons that I didn't get since the game has a store that you can go to in between levels to unlock stuff in. There's a lot of replay value here since the game encourages multiple run-throughs plus the whole custom maps thing. Oh, I almost forgot. There's one last weapon I got that I've forgotten to mention. Yeah, see, you know how in most shooters the super shotgun is a double barrel? Prodeus ain't down with that beta male shit. This game has a fucking quad barrel. Hang on there, kid. I'm gonna need to stop you. High T Kings only beyond this point. This thing kicks ass. As expected, the secondary fire shoots all 4 barrels at once, which bleeds through your shells but fucking annihilates anything standing in front of you. This weapon makes the game a lot easier. It's almost unfair, but it's badass, so who cares? Anyway, like I said, that's all the weapons I got in my playthrough. That kind of leads me to my one single criticism with caveats. This game is pretty short. Like, I beat the whole thing in 5 hours short. I have no doubts that there's people out there who can clear this thing twice as fast. The caveat is that, like I said earlier, I get the feeling that Prodeus is almost meant to be more of a platform than anything. You've got the map maker, which is apparently just the exact same tools the devs use to make the base levels, plus a whole library of community content to play through, and like I also mentioned earlier, there's all the unlocks you can get in the main story, so it's not like you beat the game once and then there's nothing left to do, but I still feel like it's pretty important to mention. The last level itself is really weird. It's not bad, it's actually pretty fun, it just doesn't really feel like it's the final level. You just stand in a room and kill shit for like 10 minutes until the game just sort of ends. No final cutscene, no credits, you just go back to the level select screen and get a text box that says, hey, you just killed a bunch of motherfuckers, but there's still more motherfuckers to kill in another castle that we haven't made yet, so come back when the DLC drops. Kind of a case of blue balls if you ask me. I still really enjoyed the game overall, and I'm definitely going to go full consumer mode when the DLC comes out and get that. Plus, I also look forward to checking out some of the community stuff for this game, since it's always really awesome when devs do that kind of shit. The fact that this game comes with level creation tools packaged in is fucking awesome, and I can imagine is going to really contribute to any sort of longevity this thing might have. I can't remember if I've gone on this rant before, but it always pisses me off how the industry's idea of a forever game has shifted from being community-driven to corporate-driven, because as soon as the money dries up and the updates start coming, that's it, the game's dead. Whereas if you look at Doom or Quake, it's been 30 years and those games are still going strong thanks to the constant outpouring of fan-made levels and expansions. whatever, that's my patented rant about the state of the industry that I do in seemingly every video now. I liked Prodeus. If it looks cool to you, I'd check it out and all that shit. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna set up the map editor and remake all of the Sly Cooper levels in this thing. Hopefully you can do that. Alright, that's another one down. This video was a bit shorter than the last few I've made on specific games, mostly because I beat this game a lot quicker than I expected. But the next video that I make that covers a specific singular game, that one will probably be a normal length, because that game took me about the normal amount of time to beat. But other than that, yeah, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say that I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, the standard YouTuber outro stuff that everybody says at the end of every video, and I'm no different. And also, I want to give a big thank you to the patrons over on Patreon: Spec Teams 1 Slingshots, Zorio, the Gazer Patron, Lev, and Blue Yutsu, as well as the members here on YouTube, Saiga and Brigador24. Really appreciate y'all, really appreciate everyone, and yeah, other than that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.